All right, good afternoon. We'll call to order the City of Murfreesboro Board of Zoning Appeals regular meeting for April 27th, 2016. Our first item on the agenda, I'd like to pass it to Mr. Anthony, who has an announcement or two for us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Young. I do want to introduce Tim Tipps, who is the newest member of the Board of Zoning Appeals. This is his first meeting with us, and we are very pleased to have him. Welcome.
Thank you.
Second announcement, I just want to let you know that in the month of June, this room will be undergoing renovations. So the Board of Zoning Appeals will be relocated to room 218 here in City Hall. So again, that's for the June meeting, not the May meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is the consideration of the minutes for the regular meeting from March 23rd, 2016. Those were provided to the board members. Are there any changes?
There was a section on page 10 in reference to the Sonic, the drive-through application, and there in the middle of that page, there was a discussion. I recall the discussion. I don't know exactly what was said, where Mr. Halliburton was considering whether there could be a revocation. And the language used there, and I don't mean to be critical in any way, but I haven't looked at the video since then. But the language looked there was difficult. It looked. It was my statement that caused me concern because it says that I added it would be a risk the applicants would be willing to take, and that's not something that I could say. I couldn't say that because I'm not the applicant, and so I wasn't sure what I said exactly. But I wasn't sure if it was just that was something that the applicants would have to be willing to take, and not that they would be willing to take it. And so I just wanted to see if there was any ability to clarify that, and if I don't think that I stated that Sonic was able to be willing to undertake that risk. I think that was more that I was saying that they would have to. And so I just wanted to point that out. I just think that the way that it's written makes sense to me in my memory, but it wouldn't make sense if I read it a year from now.
Okay.
And so
we can go back and listen to that again and revise. We can bring these back to you to approve at the next meeting, or do you want to amend them now and approve now? Would you prefer that we go back and listen?
I can't recall exactly what was said. Okay. It was just a matter. It just seemed fuzzy, and I'm sure that it doesn't. It's sure. In the long and short of it, it's not going to make that big of a difference. It's just a matter of. It seems like there may be a little bit of clarification that's necessary.
I think, Brenda, we can go back and review these, and then just we'll bring this back. We'll bring this back to you next month.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there anything else that need to be addressed while we're taking a look at those?
Mr. Chair, question. Page 2, 6th line down at the bottom. Speaks, of course, I wasn't here, so I don't know, but it looks like that in regard to Stones River Manor, that it says a certificate of need in September 2016. They were granted, and we hadn't got there yet, so I'm assuming that must be 2015 instead of 2016.
That may just be something else to look at in the video and double check before we approve
it's speaking that they were granted a certificate of need.
Right.
And it's not, we haven't got to September 2016 yet, so it has to be something prior to that, I would assume.
Yeah, we'll go back and listen to what the applicant said on that one.
And last question on page 3, that second main paragraph, says, since Murfreesboro is building a hospice center, is the city, just a question, is the city building a hospice center? He said they plan to use the southwest corner for a hospice center. Since Murfreesboro is building a hospice center, Stones River Manor will utilize the southwest corner for another type of geriatric service. Does that mean the city is doing that?
I don't know. This should be verbatim from the applicant, so we'll be happy to go back and listen to it again and clarify.
That's all I had.
Okay. So we'll put those aside till next meeting and get those approved. Next on our agenda is the nominations and elections for chair and vice chair. The first is nomination election of chair to serve the remainder of 2016.
I'll make a nomination that Davis Young serve as our chair.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? So let that pass. The next nomination, election of a vice chair to serve the remainder of 2016.
Make a motion to appoint Ken Halliburton.
I'll second.
With a delay.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. So we've got that taken care of. Next item is under new business. We'll start with sign variance requests. Our first one is application S16023 by Betsy Shackelford for Premier Sign Company representing Slim Chickens. They're requesting a variance from section 25 and a quarter 26A22 of the Murfreesboro sign ordinance, which prohibits a sign being placed in or over a public utility or drainage easement. This is for property located at 229 North Thompson Lane. Ms. Kerr, would you review that for us?
Thank you, Chairman Young, members of the board. The applicant, Betsy Shackelford with Premier Signs, representing Slim Chickens, is requesting a variance from section 25 and a quarter 24A22 of the City of Murfreesboro sign ordinance, which prohibits a sign placed in or over any public utility or drainage easement without the consent of the easement holders and Board of Zoning approval. The proposed sign is located at 229 North Thompson Lane and is within the Gateway District Overlay 1. The applicant is requesting permission to erect one externally illuminated 40-square-foot display area freestanding wall sign with push-through style illumination and an overall height of 8 foot 2 inches. The sign will be located within a 42-foot public utility and drainage easements. The agreement for a sign in a city easement Murfreesboro has been signed by the Murfreesboro Water and Sewer Department, Murfreesboro Electric Department, the Director of Building and Codes, the city engineer, and an agreement for a sign in an easement letter has been submitted from Atmos Energy and AT&T. Due to the sensitivity of the placement of the sign in regard to utility lines, staff requires that the sign be located on site by a Tennessee registered engineer or surveyor and that a form for certification of sign placement be provided prior to permitting. The applicant will conform with all other setbacks and regulations. And Mr. Clay Curtis with Premier Signs is here to answer any questions you may have, as well as myself.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Kerr at this point? Mr. Curtis, anything you'd like to add to the application?
No, sir, I don't think so.
Okay. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. All those wishing to speak, if you would, please come to the podium and state your name and address for us and any comments. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion.
If there's no further discussion, I move to approve the application subject to any staff comments.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That application has been approved. Our next application is S16024 by Kim Stalker of Rutherford County Schools, requesting a variance from section 25 and a quarter 24C1 of the Murfreesboro sign ordinance, which prohibits internally illuminated wall signs in a residential district. This is for property located in an RS15 district at 355 West Thompson Lane. Ms. Kerr, if you would review that one.
Thank you. The applicant, Kim Stoker, the school principal representing Siegel Middle School, is requesting a variance from section 25 and a quarter 26C1A2 illumination of the City of Murfreesboro sign ordinance, which only allows freestanding wall signs within a residential zone to be either non-illuminated or indirectly illuminated. Siegel Middle School is requesting a variance to be allowed to install a 40-square-foot internally illuminated freestanding wall sign with a manual changeable copy area and 7 foot 6 inches in height on their property located at 355 West Thompson Lane. The property is located on West Thompson Lane across the street from Tennessee Miller Coliseum and between First United Methodist Church and Siegel High School. The proposed sign would be approximately 750 foot from any residential housing areas. It's 29 foot from the right-of-way and 56 foot from the edge of the road. All other setbacks and regulations will apply. Ms. Stoker is here to answer any questions as well as myself.
Any questions for Ms. Kerr at this point?
There's a picture of Siegel Elementary and a Siegel High School signs, and those look like they're internally illuminated. Are those in the city, or are they
They are also county schools, in residential areas. Those signs were installed prior to a sign ordinance amendment that would no longer allow internally illuminated.
So the middle school was built after those schools were built and after
Well, the
that.
signs, that's the information that I have.
Is that the signs
the only
were-
reasonable explanation that they would have. Those signs were put in prior to my tenure here. So the information we have on record does not mention any type of illumination in either one of those signs. So it's my assumption that there had to have been an ordinance amendment change for that to
But
occur.
those are within the same general location as Siegel Middle as well, correct?
Correct. They are on either side of them.
Okay.
Thank you. If the applicant like to add anything at this point?
I did not, other than Siegel High School was actually built after Siegel Middle. And Ernest Siegel is a city school. Siegel Middle-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Siegel Middle and Siegel High School are both county schools, but they all are within the same, we are all in the same area.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you'd come forward, please. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for discussion or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, if no further questions, I move to approve the sign variance.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. That application's been approved. All right, next we'll move on to variance and special use permits. Our first one is application 16025 by Julie Smith of Absolute Fireworks, making two requests for property in the Highway Commercial District located at 131 Cason Lane. The first part of the application is a special use permit to operate the temporary outdoor vending establishment, in this case a fireworks retailer. And the second is a variance from Section 9D2EE2 of the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, which prohibits a temporary vendor located on the site of a permanent business from displacing more than 25% of the total parking available on the site. Mr. Anthony, if you would review that for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant, Julie Smith of Absolute Fireworks, wishes to operate a fireworks tent in the parking lot of Gish's Amish Legacies, which is located at 131 Cason Lane. This site has been approved for several years for fireworks sales. The applicant does attest in the request letter that all the standards of general applicability have been met or will be met. In addition to the special use permit request, the applicant seeks a variance from the board to allow the fireworks tent to displace 30% of the total available parking spaces on the site. The zoning ordinance prohibits temporary vendors from displacing more than 25% of a site's total parking spaces. The Gish's parking lot has 40 spaces, and the applicant would take up 12 of those, which again is 30% of the total available parking spaces. This variance has been granted to this applicant in previous years. This application will require two separate votes, one for the special use permit and one for the variance request. And if the board approves the application, staff recommends the following conditions. And I want to point out that the first 7 conditions are standard for all of today's fireworks vendors, so I won't repeat those each time unless you want me to, in which case I'd be more than happy. But I'm going to go ahead and read them this time, okay? Number 1, the applicant shall provide certification that the tent is flame resistant or treated to be flame resistant. 2, the applicant shall keep and maintain a fire extinguisher on site at all times. 3, the applicant shall keep the city's fireworks ordinance posted on site at all times. 4, fireworks shall not be set off on site. 5, the applicant shall apply for and pass an electrical safety inspection prior to opening for business. An electrical permit shall be purchased from the Building and Codes Department in order to obtain this inspection. 6, the fireworks tent shall meet all minimum building setback requirements for the CH zoning district. 7, the applicant shall obtain a tent permit for the fireworks tent. And on this particular one, condition number 8, all outdoor product displays, storage areas, and delivery vehicles shall be removed from the southernmost row of parking spaces and shall remain outside this area for the duration of the operation of the fireworks tent. The delivery vehicle for the existing permanent business shall be parked off-site for the duration of the operation of the fireworks tent. Staff can answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions at this point? If not, is there anything the applicant would like to add? Let me see Ms. Smith if she's... Okay. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Is anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion on the first of our two parts.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the special use permit subject to staff conditions.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. So part one has been approved. Now we'll move to section 2.
I'll make a motion that we approve the variance with respects to displacing more than 25% of the total parking available on the site, subject to any staff comments.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that piece? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. Ms. Smith, that's been approved. Next, we'll move to application Z16026 by Jake Lloyd of Mid-America Distributors, making the following requests for property in the Highway Commercial District located at 2510 South Church Street. This application has 3 components. The special use permit to operate the temporary outdoor vending establishment. Part 2, variance from Section 25E5 of the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, which requires temporary and accessory structures in commercial and industrial districts to comply with the same building setbacks required for principal structures. And third, a 42-foot variance from Chart 2 of the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, which requires a minimum 42-foot front setback in the CH district. Mr. Anthony.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant, Jake Lloyd of Mid-America Distributors, wishes to operate a fireworks tent in an existing parking lot at 2510 South Church Street, which is at the intersection of South Church and Warrior Drive. A commercial structure housing a tobacco store and a liquor store currently sits on the property. The proposed fireworks tent would be situated on a gravel parking area north of the existing commercial structure, and this site has been used for several years for fireworks sales. In addition to the special use permit, the applicant seeks 2 variances, both related to the front setback along Warrior Drive. Chart 2 of the zoning ordinance requires a minimum 42-foot front setback in the CH district, and Section 25E5 of the ordinance requires that accessory structures in commercial districts comply with the minimum building setbacks. The proposed tent would lie adjacent to the property line along Warrior Drive, thus encroaching into the 42-foot front yard setback by approximately 42 feet. This application will require 3 separate votes, 1 for the special use permit and then 1 for each of the variance requests. If the board approves the application, staff recommends the same standard 7 conditions along with 4 more. Vehicular access from Warrior Drive shall not be allowed. Next condition, all grass and weeds growing through the existing gravel shall be removed and or destroyed. The applicant shall supplement existing gravel with additional gravel to provide a smoother driving and walking surface where needed. Next condition, prior to placing the tent on the site, the applicant shall have the existing water line on the site field located by a licensed surveyor. The surveyor shall lay out the location of the tent and provide evidence to staff that the location of the tent is at least 10 feet from the marked water line. Evidence shall be provided to staff that each of these required steps have been taken to protect the water line. And a final condition, tent stakes shall not be located within 10 feet of the marked water line. Staff can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask it, but is with that corner on Warrior Drive, when you're saying it's butting up to the 40, is this in the same location that this tent was last year or in prior years?
Yes, this request has been approved in previous years. The tent, actually, if we can pull it up on the screen, there's an exhibit that shows the placement of the tent. This is where it has been placed in the past, and that's just to maximize the amount of parking available.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, Mr. Lloyd, anything you'd like to add to the application?
Actually, one with this one.
Okay.
I can't remember for sure, but I thought that last year it didn't say anything about the tent, and I don't even know that this is an issue, but with the tent corner, I know it said something about the stakes being within 10 feet, but I don't believe it said anything about the actual tent corner, just because it doesn't actually penetrate the ground. That being said, to remedy the problem that we'd had in past years with the stakes, we went with a frame tent last year, and so we didn't have to have any stakes on that corner anyways. I guess all I'm saying is, and I can't recall for sure, but I don't think that actual pole is within 10 feet of the water line anyways, but just in case it does fall within, 9 feet or something like that, like it doesn't actually go into the gravel at all, if that makes sense. And then again, since it's a frame tent, it doesn't actually have to have a stake on that end, on that corner at all.
Are you referencing the part that was just read that says the middle of section 10 states the location of the tent is at least 10 feet from the marked water line?
Correct.
And then it says in 11 that tent stakes shall not be located within 10 feet of the marked water line?
Correct. I had thought.
And so you're concerned that the tent itself might be within 10 feet of the marked water line?
It could be, and I wish I had a more accurate answer as to yes it is or no it isn't. I don't think that it is, but just in case it is, barely per se, I just wanted to see if that would be an issue if we took that one wording out, just because, like I said, the corner pole, it doesn't penetrate the ground at all. So, I mean, unless a tornado comes and picks it up and slams it down, and it drives that tent pole into the ground, which it would probably bend in two first, it's impossible for it to interfere with the water lines whatsoever underground. Now, the stakes, on the other hand, are a different story, but again, that's why we went with a frame tent, because we don't even put stakes down there.
There aren't stakes on any corner, or just the corner in question out there?
Just down there.
Okay.
Frame tents are designed where they're freestanding. Like, a pole tent actually needs the stakes to maintain the structure of the tent and hold it up. But a frame tent has a framework built into the top of it. So you could set it there, just like you do a camping tent. You could set it there. It's just if wind comes, it would essentially just blow it away. So we stake it, just we don't stake it there, which actually works out because the prevailing winds usually come from the opposite direction, or if there's storms or whatever. So,
Mr. Anthony, what's the concern of the city there? Is that just with tent stakes, or was it?
Well, I would first of all say that these are the exact same conditions that have been imposed on this project for years. So I'm not sure why it's.
Well, it may not be an issue then. I just, like I said, I could not remember for sure if it came in 9 feet. I didn't want to be like, oh my gosh, because I just know when when this originally came up with Matthew, it was always the concern of the stakes being within 10 feet.
I remember our discussion last year about frame tents versus stake tents.
Yeah.
I don't know why I remember that, but I remember that.
Well, there were
learning
several
that
questions
last
about
year.
it last year. I remember that, but I didn't even realize if that was in there, that it was, because in the past it's always been the concern of being stakes.
My assumption would be that we would be most concerned about stakes breaching a water line. And so that would be my interpretation of that,
Okay.
Of that condition.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah, I mean,
Better
like
safe
I said,
than sorry.
I hate to bring it up when I'm not even sure that it's an
Sure.
issue.
Never hurts.
Measure it for next year.
Okay, at this time we'll hold the public hearing. Is there anyone present that wishes to speak for or against the application? If you'd come forward. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion. And again, this one has 3 parts.
Mr. Chairman, I'll take the first one, the special use permit. I'll make a motion to approve it with the conditions set by the staff.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. Part 1 passes. Now we'll move to Section 2.
I'll make a motion to approve Section 2, the variance, which requires temporary and accessory structures in commercial and industrial districts to comply with the same minimum building setbacks required as principal structures. I'll move to approve that variance, subject to staff comments.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. Now we'll move to Section 3.
I'll make a motion, we approve the 42-foot variance from Chart 2, which requires a 42-foot front yard setback in the CH district.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that application passes. Next, we'll move on to application Z16027 by Mr. Jake Lloyd of Mid-America Distributors, making the following request for property in a highway commercial district located at 1622 Northwest Broad Street. This application has three components as well. The first being a special use permit to operate the temporary outdoor vending establishment. Part 2, a variance from Section 25E5 of the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, which requires temporary and accessory structures in commercial and industrial districts to comply with the same minimum building setbacks required for principal structures. And the third component is a 22-foot variance from Chart 2, the minimum lot requirements, minimum yard requirements, and land use intensity ratios of the zoning ordinance, which requires a minimum 42-foot front setback in the commercial highway district. Mr. Anthony.
Mr. Chairman, I feel terrible for not catching you before you started reading that. This application has been withdrawn.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, strike. You could have jumped in any time there.
How would that play out on television?
That's true. That's true. Okay. Then we'll move on to special use permit requests. Application Z16028 by Stephanie Norwood, requesting a special use permit to operate a home occupation, pet grooming business on property in a single-family residential district, RS10, located at 1105 Grantland Avenue. Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, sir. The applicant, Stephanie Norwood, wishes to continue operating a pet grooming business as a home occupation in her residence located at 1105 Grantland Avenue. The applicant has operated this business for several years. The Building and Codes Department notified Ms. Norwood that she would need to obtain a special use permit to continue operating this business out of her home, and so she promptly applied to the BZA for a special use permit. The property lies within the RS10 zoning district and is surrounded primarily by other single-family homes, also zoned RS10. The Mitchell-Nilson School property is located to the west or to the rear of Ms. Norwood's home. The applicant has provided an aerial photo showing the parking available on the property. We'll pull that up right now. And she has marked where her customer, typically one customer at a time, parks. She has agreed to see only one customer at a time to prevent any sort of traffic conflicts or tie-ups. And she has indicated that the standards of general applicability will be satisfied. Ms. Norwood has also provided a petition supporting her request and signed by several of her neighbors, which I have included in your packets as well. If the board approves Ms. Norwood's application, staff recommends the following conditions. 1, all client visits are to be by appointment only. 2, hours of operation shall be limited to those requested by the applicant in the request letter. 3, the applicant shall arrange appointment times such that no appointment begins less than 15 minutes after the previous appointment ends. And 4, any signage placed on the property shall adhere to the standards set forth in the city sign ordinance and the zoning ordinance. Ms. Norwood is here and can answer any questions. Staff can answer any questions that you may have as well.
Any questions for staff at this point? If not, Ms. Norwood, anything you'd like to add to the application?
No, sir.
Okay. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? If you would, please come to the podium, state your name and address for us, and any comments you might have.
My name is Carol Tollerson. I've lived at 1014 Grantland for over 25 years. I own the properties at 1100 Grantland, and I'm part owner of 1104, part owner of 1014 Grantland. I am opposed to any type of issuance of special building permit for a couple of reasons. Our area on Grantland Avenue, the property in question, backs up to Mitchell Nielsen Elementary. One side of Grantland at this time, right now, there are homes and about 7 children. My major concern here is traffic on Grantland Avenue. We are being used as a bypass currently to get access to Clark from Medical Center Parkway. We've asked repeatedly, please, could we have a stop sign? If not, a stoplight, maybe speed bumps. We don't have any type of sidewalks. We don't have curbs. People use this all the time just as pedestrians to walk. Also, the school bus picks up and lets children off on the corner of Lynn and Grantland Avenue, which is about 200 feet from this property. My concern is for the safety of children and pedestrians walking along Grantland. I'm afraid that if we set a legal precedent, in this case, just what sounds very innocuous, just issuing a special use permit, you will legally open the door to more businesses on Grantland. It is a straight shot for people trying to get to the expressway. Please, if nothing else, help us get stoplight, stop sign. Keep this from having a really tragic consequence. People have been speeding. My most important concern as an RN, as a working RN, is the protection of our children. I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? If not, we'll close the public hearing and open the floor for further discussions.
Mr. Anthony, was there any research done as to the history of this area and any other special use permits being approved in the past?
Yes, and I do not recall any in this immediate area.
Mr. Anthony, didn't you say that she's been operating this business for a while?
That's my understanding for at least a couple of years.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
My concern is that
Well, we've closed the public hearing. If you want to come to the podium, I'll give you one last shot, and then we'll let us deliver.
Mitchell Nielsen area is a wonderful place to raise children. It's a good family-oriented community. In about 25 years, it'll be over 100 years old. It is the first subdivision of Murfreesboro, and it's held together by 2 wonderful schools and the Third Baptist Church. And I hope we can keep it as single-family dwelling area that doesn't open itself up to commercial development on any level. Thank you.
Mr. Anthony, did the applicant give you any indication of how many? Seems like we've had a number of appointments in other applications such as this when they're in, how many trips to expect, or is there such a?
I don't recall if we had that discussion. Is it okay if she
Sure,
answers?
absolutely.
Okay.
I only do. I'm particularly small. It's just me. So we're talking 1 to 2 per day, at the max 6, but they're all spread out, and that's very occasional. It's just me that runs the business.
Okay.
And I do have insurance, and the shop that I use is attached to my home, so it's in the garage, and it's secure, where the owners are made to keep their animals either on a leash or in a kennel. They are not allowed to bring them in without being restrained.
Okay.
Mr. Norwood, usually when we look at these in-home businesses, and the board members can correct me if I'm wrong, or Mr. Anthony can, we don't usually have these length of operations, because if I understand correctly, what you're applying for is till 7 p.m. That's at least what you've got in your notes.
Typically, my day ends at 5:30, and if
Yeah.
I need to shorten that, I can.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I was to approve this, I think that, I don't know that I could go beyond, say, 5 or 5:30, because that's typical of what we've done with respects to these
That's
in-home
fine.
businesses.
Yes, sir. I can do those hours.
You're talking about in-home personal services, those types of things, but not like people that operate office or professional, say,
Even if it's come before the board, usually we've cut it off at a certain time. Now, I'm not sure how many office uses we see. Usually there are more to do with individuals that are having actually what I would call foot traffic to their house.
Okay.
If you have an office use within your home that doesn't generate any traffic, typically we administratively approve those, and they don't ever make it to the board.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Norwood.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and start the discussion on this. In reference, and I'm sorry I've forgotten your name already, but in reference to it opening up to more commercial uses, I would say that just because if we were to approve this, that's not necessarily setting a precedence per se. What I would say is that we take each applicant or application on its own merit. To sit here and say that we have approved every in-home business that's ever been before us, I can recall one 4 or 5 months ago that we did not approve based upon the fact that we felt like the traffic volume that was going to be, and what I mean by the traffic volume, the number of trips that would be coming in and out of this home, we felt like would impact the neighbors, and of course the neighbors felt that way also. So I wanted to, before we take a vote on this or I make a motion on it, I want you to know that we will look, if anything ever comes up in this area or any other area, it will be reviewed on its own merit. And those are some of the things that we would take into consideration. I'm actually okay with this, with the 1 or 2 trips a day, as long as we reduce the ending hour to 5:30 p.m. So I'll make a motion that we approve subject to that change.
Are you also going to approve for the conditions he's already set?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry. Yes, ma'am.
And I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. There any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. That application's been approved. Next, we'll move to application Z16029 by Matt Taylor of SEC Inc., representing Salem Academy Daycare, requesting a special use permit to allow a daycare center in the general office district along the south side of Oval Hessen Lane, west of St. Andrews Drive. Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant, Matt Taylor of SEC, representing Salem Academy Daycare, seeks a special use permit to allow a daycare center on property located along the south side of Oval Hessen Lane, west of St. Andrews Drive. The property is zoned OG, and daycare centers are allowed in this district by special use permit. The property is surrounded by a mix of zoning districts, including OG to the west, RS12 to the north, OG to the northeast, RM16 to the east, and CF to the south and southeast. So as you can tell, it's a pretty broad mix. The subject property is a 0.73 acre portion of a larger tract of property located immediately east of the existing Salem Academy Daycare facility. And I will pull up a photo here to give you an idea of where we're looking. If you look up now, you can see the existing Salem Academy Daycare on Oval Hessen, and the property would be just to the right in this photograph, the property that we're looking at. Here are some shots. This is a shot of the existing daycare facility and then the empty field next to it, which is where this new facility would be placed. The new structure would accommodate up to 110 children and would operate from 6 a.m. until 6 p.m. daily. The new structure would be accessed by a single curb cut on Oval Hessen Lane, which was shown in the site layout provided by Mr. Taylor. The site layout shows that the minimum parking requirements for daycare use will be exceeded by, I believe, 2 spaces. The applicant has provided draft building elevations, which give some idea on how the building will appear. The primary building material is brick, and architectural features may include columns, dormers, gable, and cupola. The applicant would work with staff during the site plan review process to ensure that the building materials and features are compatible with the surroundings. The applicant attests that all of the standards of general applicability will be met. And further, the applicant has addressed each of the specific standards for daycare centers. Specifically, 1, an on-site off-street loading and unloading area is provided. 2, vehicles can exit the site without backing onto any street or sidewalk. And 3, all required off-street parking is provided on site. If the board approves the application, staff recommends 1 condition, and this is standard for daycare centers. Prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, the applicant shall provide planning staff a statement from the State of Tennessee Department of Human Services that the proposed daycare facility can comply with all requirements of the State of Tennessee with regard to such use. Staff can answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Any questions for staff at this point?
So is this, in essence, an expansion, but it's an additional building?
Matt Taylor of SEC. Yes, ma'am. Essentially, the daycare is not actually building the buildings, they're leasing them. And so my client, Mr. Decker, is building these and leasing those back. And so as an option, rather than expanding onto the building and making a larger facility, especially with the roof features and knowing that it's already an operational, they wanted to do a smaller, this is about the same size building, but do 2 smaller buildings.
And just divide half the children in one and half the children in
Yes, ma'am. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to divide it. I would guess it'd be by age group, but I'm not entirely certain on that.
Would there wouldn't be any need for transportation of children or anything between the 2?
No, ma'am, I don't think so. We may wind up linking them with a sidewalk, just so they can, some of the adults can get back and forth. I don't think the children will actually physically be going back and forth. I think because it's going to be on a separate lot of record, it's going to have all of its own facilities inside as well as the playground areas outside.
Okay.
Any other questions for Matt? So this parcel is inside this OG. It's going to border other OG zoning. Is that correct? There's not special landscaping stipulations to it?
Correct. If it was bordering any residential property, it would require some screening, but because it is surrounded,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Is anybody present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
I'll make a motion we approve, subject to all staff comments.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. That application has been approved. Next, we'll move to application Z16030 by John Rudd of Stepping Stone Safe Haven, Inc., requesting a special use permit to operate a group shelter on property in the multifamily residential RM12 district located at 720 Old Salem Road. Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant, John Rudd of Stepping Stone Safe Haven, seeks a special use permit to operate a group shelter on the property located at 720 Old Salem Road. An existing structure owned by Calvary Baptist Church is located on the site. The site is actually oriented more toward Douglas Avenue. The existing structure faces Douglas, and the parking lot entrance is on Douglas as well. The property is zoned RM12, and group shelters are allowed in this district by a special use permit. The board granted a special use permit for this property to Westgate Baptist Church in 1980 in order to operate a church on the site, and the church has been operating since that time, currently, again, owned by Calvary Baptist Church. So this request should be considered more as an amendment to that special use permit. Should Stepping Stones Safe Haven, for whatever reason, not be able to close on this property, the special use permit for the church should remain intact. The applicant wishes to use the existing structure to provide a shelter and meeting space for homeless women being served by Stepping Stones. The organization typically works with 20 to 30 women at any given time. A portion of the structure would be used for the organization's offices as well. The site is currently served by a gravel parking lot, and staff recommends that this applicant be required to pave and stripe the lot to comply with zoning ordinance standards if the special use permit is approved. It appears that there is sufficient space to accommodate the 10 required parking spaces for this use. Additionally, the zoning ordinance requires screening between group shelters and adjoining properties. This property abuts residential properties on the north and west, and there are presently tree lines along both of these property lines providing sort of a natural screening. These tree lines should be maintained and supplemented as needed. If the board approves the application, staff recommends the following 3 conditions. 1, the existing landscaping on the site, including all trees along the property line, shall be preserved. Where openings or gaps exist along the existing tree row, allowing clear visibility between the shelter facility and the neighboring residential properties to the north and west, the applicant shall supplement the existing tree row with additional plantings. The applicant may consult with the city's urban environmental staff to determine the most appropriate plantings to screen the shelter facility. 2, the applicant shall provide a statement from the State of Tennessee Department of Human Services or any other state-sponsored agency or department, if any, that may have regulatory jurisdiction over such facilities, stating that such group shelter can comply with all requirements of the State of Tennessee with respect to such use. And we'll work with the applicant on that. My understanding is that they may not fall under state regulation on this, so we'll be happy to work with them. And then the 3rd condition, the applicant shall follow all the design standards listed in Section 26C7 of the Murfreesboro Zoning Ordinance. These standards include, but are not limited to, refinishing the parking area with a hard surface, dustless material. Staff can answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions at this point?
So there's not any plans to renovate the structure on site? This would be occurring within the same structure that's on site?
I would direct that question probably to the applicant. The plans that were submitted did not include any renovation, but they may well have, they may well intend some.
Good afternoon. I'm John Rudd, and we would be doing some renovation inside. We're going to put showers in there, room for a washer and dryer, do some work in the kitchen, change the bathrooms a little bit, and sprinkle the facility, and put sprinklers in to make it up to codes.
But there's no external. There's no addition. There's no additions being. The building is not going to have an addition or any changes externally. These are all internal.
There won't be any change in the footprint of the building. There is a fenced area to the side that's actually towards Salem Highway, and we might put a like a carport, like a covered area, like a porch there, so people could sit outside and have a place that would be available to be outside. Right now,
like
there's really not a place. Something like that. And the fenced area, this is actually would be women and children, no men, and it would be made into a safe space inside the fenced area.
In fact, I had a question about that. It looks like, of course, the fence is just around that one side.
Right.
And how high, how secure is that fence?
The fence is a chain link fence. I believe it's 4 feet tall. My best I can remember. Oh, is it 6? Okay, 6 feet tall. It's secure. I mean, it's just a chain link fence.
Well, I mean, if we're talking, to be secure to women and children that could be under some threat of abuse, wouldn't it make sense for it to be a much higher fence to keep people out, like, say, men that are trying to retaliate for some reason?
Well, it's not going to have a sign. I've dealt with the shelters here in town for several years, and I worked with the one at the Nazarene Church on Hamilton Drive until they basically asked us to leave. They were going to do something else with it. And in that time period, we've really never had a problem with anything where it was secure. And in that location, there was no fence anywhere, and the children just played out in the grass beside the building. So this is more secure than what I'm used to dealing with, but I don't know really how to make it more protected except to enclose it and build a wall around it.
Well, I would think you might consider a higher fence, just as a thought.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an objection
And maybe
to
one
it.
around the entire perimeter as opposed to just that one little section.
Probably, I didn't want to make this really contingent upon the approval, but, we'll probably put a wooden 6-foot fence on two sides of the property that would be, basically bordering the residential areas
Right.
there. And then leave the chain link fence and have an area in there that probably put a garden or something like that, and also maybe a couple of picnic tables and maybe a playground set for the little kids. The number of people vary considerably day to day, week to week. A lot of times they're into Murfreesboro and out, and so there's no real way to know exactly what kind of population you'll have.
How long do you allow them to stay, or do they stay until they get their own home? Or?
Yeah, there's no requirement on that.
No requirement.
They basically, a lot of people who, and I've been doing this for quite some time, where I basically help, and this came out of the need for a place that I could control better. There's no requirement as far as how long they can stay, what they can do. They can stay as long as they want.
Right.
Many people who come through like this are here for a few days, a few weeks, and then they move on.
So you've been operating this type business for a good while?
Well, I hate to say a business, but it's,
Mission.
I'm a physician,
Sorry.
and so I don't really, this is just kind of something I feel called in as a service to do. It's, there's no income associated with it.
I'm familiar with the domestic violence center here in town that does have some security.
Yeah, this is not that.
Things to set up. So you're saying you don't have, it's not quite overlapping.
We've never had a problem with, this is not domestic violence. This is homeless people. And, it's not to say someone who's a victim of domestic violence couldn't be homeless, but it's not something that we've ever tracked. It's more like they're homeless. If they are afraid or feel they're in danger, they really go the track of the domestic violence center. And it's not something we've planned for.
Okay.
I think it's a great thing y'all are doing. It's much needed.
Unfortunately, it is.
Dr. Rudd, is there somebody there from Stepping Stone 24/7, or that's not necessarily how it works?
No, there would be somebody there. Now, it could be that sometimes depending on the people that are residing there, you might have one or two people that will be there for an extended period of time that will help out with things. Many of these people are, extremely capable.
Right.
One of the ladies that I had taken care of this last year was a PhD in psychology, and she was basically found herself homeless, and she was tremendous in the benefit she added to the other residents. So, there might be someone who's actually there residing who would be there, but otherwise it'd be somebody that is working with us, mostly volunteers.
The last question I have, and it may be in this application, but by the time you get done with all meeting the codes, how many people will codes allow you to house in the structure?
We'll have to see that. Whatever it is will be our limit.
Right.
And so, if they say 30 and 10 kids, I've seen in the experience I've had that I can be shocked. I can go over there one day and there's 10, and the next day there's 50. And, and I'll ask them, where are you from? And they'll, Fort Payne, Alabama, or Texarkana, Texas, or, just everywhere. And, and they'll say, well, I'm just going to be here for a few days, and then they're gone. And I don't know how they locate things. It's a mystery to me, but I know there's a need for it. And, and a lot of times what we do is, another thing I really like about this location is it's close to the Rover route. And so women can get jobs at places like Hardee's or McDonald's or Taco Bell and ride the Rover and get around and start accumulating a little money so they can, go to the next step. And, what I'd like to do is to be able to, just because of the people that I'm affiliated with and can kind of, rodeo a little volunteer work out of them, that they'll come in and help with things like career planning, computer training, church services, which, we want to continue to do that, to have services available, and try to have some organization to life to help with the structure to maybe get people back on track a little bit.
So, Mr. Anthony, the number of parking places, are they dictated by the square footage, or are they dictated by the number of occupants that can be? That's my point in asking, how are we going to dictate the number of spaces if you don't know the number of occupants that would be allowed in the building?
Give me just a minute, because it's been a while since I looked at this. So it's based on the number of people, not square footage, and so I had to base it just on the numbers that they provided, which was, I believe, I looked at that 20 to 30 range, and that's how I arrived at 10 spaces. They have sufficient space for plenty more than 10 if they're needed.
So if code says they can have 50, then that parking would be adjusted. Is that a correct statement?
Correct. It would probably need to be doubled, and as far as I can tell, I made a site visit. I've looked at a lot of photography of it. I would, with an educated guess, say that they could double double that 10 spaces if necessary.
Okay.
So if approved, should there be a condition that states that parking spaces would be contingent upon that requirement?
I think that would be perfectly fine to add as a condition. I think that internally, as they go through a review process, and once we know more from codes how many people the building can support, we would invoke that anyway.
And you can do that administratively.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
One of these conditions mentioned a state regulatory authorities, or anything like that you have to deal with?
Not that I'm aware of, but what I'll do is get the attorney I work with to research that and to be sure that if there are, we're in compliance of that.
Okay.
Question for Mr. Anthony. He mentioned possibly constructing a pavilion or a canopy. Is that going to be something that would be just permitted through the building and codes? Would not be a variance to doing anything?
That's a very good question. I think that for any new construction, aside from a parking lot, which we've already established, any new construction onto this site, I think he'll need to come back to this board to have looked at again. I think that's traditionally how we've looked at other special use permits in the past. If there's some addition onto the building, they come back to this board just to renew, basically, the special use permit. And
just point of information, I'm assuming a hard surface dustless material just means asphalt or concrete,
correct,
not necessarily some of these newer permeable type surfaces that are much more expensive. And
correct. I think that because it's a pre-existing structure, I think that their drainage, stormwater, all of that is worked out where they wouldn't need any kind of pervious material.
Do we need, sorry to ask so many questions, but I'm still kind of I'm thinking about this the fencing, and in particular, you mentioned it, and I think it's a good idea about possibly putting up a higher wood fence around the perimeter in those areas where you've got residential or multifamily residential in that area. Is that something that needs to be made as a condition? Is that a motion that you make to amend, or how does that work?
One of the conditions that's required of group shelters is that they provide screening. I believe it's probably within the purview of this board if you deem some screening aside from landscaping materials to be more suitable. I think that you could do that on the sides where screening would be necessary.
I just see this as a twofold purpose. In a sense, yeah, it gives a buffer, but it also adds, to me, it adds another layer of protection for your patrons, for the folks that are staying there.
And that's really something that I'd already pretty much considered doing. So I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? So you'd come to the microphone and state your name and address for us.
My name is Vicki Lack. I live at 423 Douglas Avenue. And I received your letter stating about the Stepping Stone Safe Haven facility that wants to be located at this area. And my first question was, what is Stepping Stone Safe Haven? Never heard of it, didn't know anything about it. I did go to the internet and I looked it up, and it did say that it helped families, children. It also said that there are some parts of Stepping Stone that helps people in recovery. So then I started talking to my neighbors over on Douglas Avenue, and at this time there really is not enough information to say that this would be a good fit for the area. And the reason for that is you're only 2 blocks away from McFadden Elementary, or School of Excellence now. Currently, there is a numerous amount of foot traffic in that area due to the journey home right across the railroad tracks. There is also the Salvation Army, which is on New Salem, which is in walking distance. There is also 975 Bridge Avenue. There is another facility that helps people in crisis. There's another one on the corner of Kings Highway that helps people in crisis. And there's the Serenity Home on Malloy Lane. And there is a number of people constantly walking through that area. There have been numerous burglaries, and unfortunately I can speak to that because I was a victim of it. And it's not about wanting to help or not help someone, because I think we all need help at times, but I don't know that this is a good fit. There is so much going on in that area in general that I think that what I personally would like to ask the board to do is to gather more information, to allow the information to be shared, and to let the people of the community know what it really is that's going in right down. It's 3 houses from me, I can tell you that. And I'm a single mother with a daughter in school. I don't know that that's a safe setup for me, especially considering I've already been burglarized. So I think there's more unanswered questions than there is information of what we actually have here. So I would like for the board to let us have more information, share it with the people in the community, and make sure that it is a safe fit. Now, the tree line that y'all were speaking of, I can tell you right now, people cut through that tree line all the time because there's an old fence, because I went to Calvary Baptist Church as a child, and I know that you can cut through that fence very easily. So there needs to be a lot more that needs to be done. But if there are people that are looking for these families, then that puts the other children that already live in this area at risk, They can't play out in their yard. They probably shouldn't play out in their yards. You were talking about a fence and to build and protect the children that you're going to bring to this home, but what about the children that already live there? They need to be, protected as well. I think if we have more information, then we would be able, as a community and as a board, to make a better decision that fits everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes. Mark Gregory, pastor of Calvary Baptist Church. We are the current owners of the building that is in question. Calvary's conducted a ministry there for about 5 years, working primarily with the surrounding streets area and Franklin Heights. And with the close of Franklin Heights, our ministry has begun to change in a couple of ways. One is that we're still ministering to a number of kids, but the number of children has reduced about half. The second thing that's changed for us is that we are now actually going to other places in the community to pick the children up, to bring them to our facility. And we've begun considering the possibility then of relocating that particular part of our ministry from the Douglas Avenue building out to our main facility. And at the same time, Stepping Stones approached us about leasing and or, as we began discussion, the possibility of purchasing the building, for they were looking for property in order to set up an administrative center, a place for them to be able to conduct their mentoring, their classroom work, and so forth. And after they looked at our building, they began to see that it held a lot of potential for them, primarily based on the current layout of the building, with classrooms already built in, a kitchen facility, a large area in the middle. We reached an agreement concerning that and felt that it was mutually beneficial to them and to us to be able to walk through the process of them purchasing the building. As we've thought about it, I think there are a number of things that are important to me. One is that even as our ministry seems to be shifting, we very much want to continue to see that particular building used for ministry purposes, if at all possible. And this, I believe, provides some continuity of ministry that would be very beneficial to the area. I think the area has benefited from us being there for 5 years and will continue to benefit from a ministry such as theirs being there on an ongoing basis. I think secondly, or perhaps in addition, not only just in the continuity of the ministry, but I think the renovation that they intend to do, the general services that they will provide to our community, I believe continue to enhance the neighborhood as we have attempted to do in these last 5 years. We've done considerable work on the inside of the building. We put up the fence, which is a 6-foot high fence all the way around with gates, with locks, etc. So I believe that what we've done has enhanced the area, and I think that the continuity of what they will be attempting to do likewise could provide that same ongoing enhancement. You're probably aware, of course, that there is significant residential area around the building, but any cursory look in the neighborhood will also tell you that we're also surrounded by commercial property. There's several different commercial properties literally within a block directly across the street. There is a paint store that's across the street from us, and then you have the large, I think called the old Hodge building that houses businesses as well as a church. So there is already a significant diversity of use in this particular area, and I don't necessarily believe that changing this one thing will make that much of an impact, but perhaps even continue to enhance it. I do have some consideration and understanding of the neighbors' concern for this. We have sought to be good neighbors ourselves, and it is my understanding that based upon what Stepping Stones is intending to do, not only will they be good neighbors, but they will seek to enhance the services to the community. I've been a pastor here for about almost 23 years, and I've observed that it takes multiple ministries to meet the needs of our community, and no one ministry has been able to do it all. And with that in mind, I think there's benefit in having this particular ministry located here. Even, it might seem somewhat of a negative, but I think actually is a positive in close proximity to some of the other types of service ministries, such as Journey Home, the Greenhouse Ministry, Salvation Station. There may actually be some benefit in having those connections and collaborations in that area. had a conversation with the pastor of the Experience Church, which is the large church that meets directly across from us, currently in the old Hodge building there. Talked with the pastor, who is a friend of mine, shared with him the process of our sale here. And he affirmed that he did not have any reservations from his personal perspective as well as from the church about the proposed building transaction with us and with Stepping Stones. And part of his letter back to me, as we talked about it, I asked him if he'd be willing to write a letter, and he did. He said, "We believe strongly in community service and the well-being of single parents that Stepping Stones is trying to reach out to and help. Furthermore," and quoting from his letter, "I believe that this type of ministry will not be a burden to our neighborhood, but will be a great resource for our city, specifically for young women who are in a difficult place in life." And I think looking at the nature of the ministry and especially the longevity of the ministry that Dr. Rudd and others have been a part of for many years, there seems to be a track record of a healthy environment rather than one that could lend itself to difficulty or in some cases such as a domestic violence center. So I think from my perspective as a pastor, it's a great asset to have an additional type of local ministry in this building. For us, we'd love the thought of continuity with that ministry in our building. So I'll stop at this moment and then perhaps can address other questions if need be in a moment. Thank you for considering this.
Hey, Mark,
Yes.
how many kids were coming in and out of there on a daily basis?
Yeah, our ministry primarily, Ken, has been on Tuesday nights. We have a children's group and a youth group, which is met at a separate location. But until Franklin Heights closed, we were running upwards in the neighborhood of about 80 children every Tuesday night.
Okay.
On average, we would run anywhere from 65 to 75. And currently now we're probably running in the 30s with an occasional bump up to around 40. And that is with us going to some of the other apartment complexes and picking them up and bringing them in. We still do have some families in that area that we pick up on Bridge Avenue and January Street and bring them in. And our intention, and this has been made clear to our congregation as well as just our volunteer base, is to pick up the children and take them right back out to our facility, which is on DeJarnett Lane. It'll add probably 10 extra minutes to the travel time, but we think that there's some benefit in continuing the ministry. We love these kids, we love these families, and we want to do our best to continue. Thank you, Ken. Other questions maybe from the church's perspective that I can answer for you? Okay, I'll hang around in case you do have others.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
One other question, Dr. Rudd.
So finish that. Anybody else wish to speak on the public hearing? Okay, that's fine.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You mentioned the administrative staff. Well, it'll be an office as well. Is that right?
I'm sure we'll have a small office in there, but it will probably be mainly for the purpose of dealing with just logistics of that building, the utility bills, the scheduling of things, just really, and helping people. One of the things that I've done, the way I've been affiliated in the past, has been I just am the doctor at the shelter, and that's kind of what I've done for a long time, where I just go over there and see people, take care of them, help them get their medicines refilled, deal with that sort of thing. And I kind of will probably end up with like a little exam table in a clinic, that I'll be taking care of people just like I always do. And so that might be part of the administrative part too.
But on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, there'll be support staff there X number of hours a day?
Yes.
Approximately, what is that X?
That's a difficult thing to say. Probably 6 or 7 in the morning till 6 or 7 at night.
Okay.
And I want to add also that in dealing with this for an extended period of time, I've never felt there was anyone at risk. I've never run into anything where, other than occasionally because of the nature of the population, we do see mental illness.
Sure.
Occasionally somebody will be upset but that's something I'm comfortable with. And that happens. But I've never had an occasion to see a police car or have to call for support in any way like that. Not to say that couldn't happen one day. It could. but it's a very safe sort of environment. Children are there, and I've never seen an instance where a child was abused or there was any threatening. And I think keeping it to women and children and excluding males helps to keep that a calmer place.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Darla Campbell. I'm a Stepping Stones board member, and I've been working with the homeless women and children in our community for almost 2 years now. So I wanted to just take this time, if I could, to clear up some of these questions that you may have in regards to security, in regards to staffing and things like that. I personally will be on property from 8 to 5 daily, Monday through Friday. Our program was initially set up as a mentoring program, which we've been doing in the community already for nearly 2 years. So we individually go to these women and have them identify what their needs are. And most often, we are able to plug them into resources that are already established within our community. But there are times when somebody, especially in the first 48 hours of becoming homeless for the very first time, that need shelter opportunity. So I will be there. If it is domestic, they go back into a domestic violence program. But I guess I just wanted to let you know that we have been doing this for a long time. This is just kind of giving us a space to be able to do some logistic work, like Dr. Rudd said, and help these women reach some goals. Some of our women are already in homes, and we still continue to meet with them. We walk through them with them for about 2 years, just providing accountability and encouragement and continuing to show them something different than what they may know based on their past experiences. It is kind of an invite-only program, so we probably won't see a lot of traffic at the location itself because we assess over the phone, and we may not be the best place for them to be, quite honestly. So it will be very minimal there. And if we do have people come in, it will be by appointment. And again, women and children only. So I don't foresee a lot of unscheduled traffic coming through that area. And I'm here to answer any other questions as well.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak to this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to accept this application along with the 3 conditions enumerated as recommended by staff, and add a 4th recommendation for at least a 6-foot-high wood or other solid surface fence around the perimeter of the property that borders the RM12 zoning area.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I have a question regarding the motion with regard to the amendment. You don't, with regard to that motion, do you only mean the not surrounding the perimeter as far as the road frontage, but only the 2 sides of the property that back to our RM12?
My intent is for it to be a buffer to the residential area that provides more of an area that is not visible. But likewise, I would like to see, and as I think from the pictures, that there are some other chain link fencing around the other areas which was another concern I had about having a little more security just for the folks that are there as well. That's really the intent of my motion. But
So with regard to Section 1, regarding the conditions recommended by the staff regarding the existing tree row and the current buffering that the staff recommended, would it be appropriate to amend that condition instead and stating in addition to those recommendations that a solid surface fence be erected at those locations?
Okay, if I'm following, you're suggesting that I'm suggesting that if at all possible to retain preserve the trees, but I think there's an additional need for some other buffer. I hate to see trees get cut down, but
right, Mr. Anthony, is there any way that you can assist with that, if as far as planning is concerned? Is there language that would appropriately state fence with regard to buffering in that sentence that you provided in your recommendations?
Yeah, I'm trying to think through of.
Just for clarification, I'm just asking for clarification so that everyone's on the same page.
I'm trying to think through of where those trees are situated along whether they're right on the property line or inside the property line, and I have an image, and it's a little difficult to make out where those trees are. I think the concern would be that a fence would displace trees. That would be my concern, and so balancing one against the other, which is a more effective screening, which one you would rather see there, I suppose, is the concern I have, and that's really more of a question for the board.
I guess my question is more as far as where buffering is required and how that language is and where our limitations lie as far as this board and the.
Sure. If we can pull the image back up, I will show you. It is my understanding from the ordinance that screening, and I believe that that's the word that's used, screening, would be required along this property line and this property line. And that's where those are the two property lines, those are the lines where the existing tree rows are. But this property abuts heavy industrial on these other sides. And actually abuts street right of way, and then heavy industrial.
So your condition mentioned supplementing those sections. Is that to a C level, like the alphabet landscaping?
Well, when I was out visiting the site, the trees are just now starting to come in bloom. So it's hard to discern at this point exactly how full a canopy and that kind of thing you have there. So the thought was that wherever there are gaps around the property, and there are some that appeared visible, but again, without the trees being in full bloom, hard to know. But wherever there were gaps, that probably some new plantings should be installed there, just to create almost more of a wall of landscaping. If you think that a fence is more appropriate, I think you can condition that, and I would definitely defer to the city attorney if he has a different interpretation on it. But I think that you can condition a fence instead. Maybe you can condition both, but you'll have to figure out if the trees need to give way to the fence at some point, which one wins.
So in your motion in adjusting the fence is looking at one of the applications you're talking about the whole property versus just.
Well, again, right. It looks like the existing fence is well off of the property line. It would still appear to me that, and I said perimeter, but it would still appear to me that if there's a possibility that the fence could just simply be brought in fewer feet off of the property line and still preserve the trees and the shrubs, which maybe doesn't benefit the patrons there at the facility, but does provide a little more aesthetic appeal to the neighborhood. And likewise, again, the fence helps, I think, both in giving a more permanent year-round buffer than tree cover gives. Plus, again, I'm back on the security, but for those inside the facility as well. That's the real intent of my motion. Whether it has to be right on the property line, no, I'm not bound to that. Again, I'd like to preserve as many trees as we can.
So I think you were saying a broader interpretation of screening, trees and fence, both as a screening mechanism.
And that's why I didn't want to change number one.
But maybe not require those additional. Well, if we added if required an additional fence, then I don't know if we need to require them to plant additional shrubbery. That would be additional cost.
This is true. Yeah, I agree with that part.
Yes. I guess that's why I was asking prior to a motion, is just number one, because I wanted to make sure that I understood your motion. But number two, just to keep the cost down for this applicant, if they were having to purchase shrubbery as well as I just had to build a fence at my house.
Agreed.
I know that's a costly endeavor. It may make more sense to amend number one to supplement the existing tree row with a solid surface fence.
Agreed. And I know I made a motion, and it has been properly seconded. I'm willing to withdraw that motion in favor of, with the concurrence of the person making the second, to strike the way I made the motion of adding number 4, striking that, the new motion 1, amending number 1 to do exactly what you said.
And I'm not. That sounds great to me, but I'm not.
I think it's a better idea.
Okay.
Since I made the motion, so I'm going to withdraw that motion if Ken concurs.
That's fine.
Can I provide an alternative wording that I think maybe captures? So, and I would say scrap condition 1 and replace it with add a 6-foot privacy fence along the property lines adjoining RM12 properties and preserve existing trees where possible.
I like that.
Does that
I'll
capture
make that
what
motion.
you're...
That captures exactly the spirit of what I intended.
Does that seem okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? If not, a motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, that application's been approved. Thank you.
In an attempt to simplify, I think I overcomplicated.
Okay, next we'll move to application Z16031 by Alton Sims, requesting a special use permit to operate a temporary vending establishment, produce sales on property in the Highway Commercial District located at 2510 South Church Street. Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Alton Sims wishes to operate a produce sales temporary vending establishment on property located at 2510 South Church Street. This is the exact same property that we just looked at the corner of South Church and Warrior. Every year, Mr. Sims operates his produce stand at this site and then gives way for 8 days during the summer for a fireworks tent to be operated there. So Mr. Sims, the zoning ordinance prohibits a site from being used for temporary vending for more than 70 days out of a year. Mr. Sims will operate for 62 days, and then the fireworks tent would have 8 days. If the special use permit is approved, the applicant's first day of business on the site will be April 29th, and his last day on the site would be October 31st. I believe the staff report says April 17th. You can tell which day I was writing the staff report. It's actually April 29th. The applicant will have a truck, a trailer, and 2 10-by-10 tents on the site each day, and he will remove the truck, the trailer, and the tents at the end of each day. As with previous years, staff will be happy to visit the site on the applicant's first day of business to ensure that all of the structures adhere to the minimum required setback lines. That's something that we've worked with Mr. Sims with in the past. The applicant attests that all standards of general applicability will be met. And if the board approves the application, staff recommends 4 conditions. The first, the days of operation shall be limited to April 29th, 2016 through October 31st on the date specified in the applicant's calendar exhibit. 2, all tents and other structures shall comply with the minimum required setbacks for the CH zoning district, including the 42-foot front setback and 20-foot rear setback. 3, all tents and other structures shall be removed from the site at the end of each business day. And 4, products shall not be displayed in the public right-of-way. Staff is happy to answer any questions that you may have, and we sort of lucked up in that the Google vehicle happened to drive by several of our sites this year, actually last year, while fireworks tents and such were set up. So this site is one of them. So we do have a few images there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Any further questions for staff now? Is Mr. Sims here? I thought I saw him earlier. Anything you'd like to add? No, sir. Okay, at this time we'll hold the public hearing. Is anyone present wishing to speak for or against the application? If you'd come forward. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, if no further questions, I make a motion to approve the application for Mr. Alton Sims.
Second.
And those are with the conditions there.
Yes, with the conditions. Thank you so much.
All right, any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That application's been approved. Next, we'll move to application Z16032 by Wesley Reed of TNT Fireworks, requesting a special use permit to operate a temporary outdoor vending establishment, fireworks retailer, on property in the Commercial Highway District located at 2012 Memorial Boulevard. Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant, Wesley Reed of TNT Fireworks, wishes to operate a fireworks tent in the existing parking lot of the Walmart store located at 2012 Memorial Boulevard. The fireworks tent would be located on the northwestern side of the site. This applicant has previously been approved for fireworks sales at this site. The applicant attests that all standards of general applicability have been met. And if the board approves the application, staff recommends the standard 7 conditions that are placed on all of the fireworks tents applications. We'll answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from Mr. Anthony? Mr. Reed?
The site, you say, has been, but they haven't had it at the Walmart. Hadn't been there that long, has it?
They had it there last year, I believe. In previous years, they had it in a Kroger lot, if I remember right. But I remember visiting this on about my second day working for the city last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was in the Walmart?
It was.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? This time we'll hold a public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for discussion or motion.
If there's no further discussion, I move to approve the application, including the conditions set by the staff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. That application's been approved. Next, we'll move to application Z16033 by Wesley Reed of TNT Fireworks, requesting a special use permit to operate a temporary outdoor vending establishment on property in Commercial Highway District located at 2000 Old Fort Parkway. Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Reed wishes to operate a fireworks tent in the existing parking lot of the Walmart store located at 2000 Old Fort Parkway. The fireworks tent would be located on the southwestern side of the site. This is one we were lucky enough to get a Google image of. The applicant attests that all standards of general applicability have been met, and the applicant has been approved for fireworks sales at this site in previous years. If the board approves the application, staff recommends the standard 7 conditions for fireworks tents. Thank you.
Any questions for staff at this point? Any questions, any comments from the applicant at this point? All right, at this time, we'll hold the public hearing. Is anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion.
No further questions. I'll make a motion to approve the application with the conditions set by the staff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Let it come back around. It's all right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. That application's been approved. Next, we'll go to application Z16034 by Wesley Reed of TNT Fireworks, requesting a special use permit to operate a temporary outdoor vending establishment on property in Commercial Highway District at 125 John R. Rice Boulevard. Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application from Mr. Reed is for the parking lot of the Sam's Club located at 125 John R. Rice Boulevard. The fireworks tent would be located on the northwestern side of the site. The applicant has previously been approved for fireworks sales at the site. He attests that all of the standards of general applicability have been met. If the board approves the application, staff recommends the standard 7 conditions plus an 8th condition: tent stakes shall not be placed within any Murfreesboro water and sewer easement or within 10 feet of any water line. Staff can answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for staff? Mr. Reed, any comments on this application? This time we'll conduct the public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for discussion or a motion.
I'll make a motion we approve, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That application's been approved. All right. Next, we'll move to application Z16035 by Kathy Biter of B&B Fireworks, requesting a special use permit to operate a temporary outdoor vending establishment on property in the Commercial Highway District located at 102 Southeast Broad Street. Mr. Anthony.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Biter's application is for property located at 102 Southeast Broad Street. This is the vacant property at the corner of Broad and South Church Street. The site includes 2 lots, and the fireworks tent would be situated toward the center of the southernmost of the 2 lots. The applicant has previously been approved for fireworks sales at this site. This is a sensitive site due to Town Creek running underneath the site. Because the underground channel carrying the creek has been breached in the past, staff recommends that certain precautions be taken by the applicant. These include identifying the placement of the channel, ensuring that vehicular traffic does not pass over the channel, and keeping tent stakes away from the channel. Traffic in the area is also a concern, so staff recommends that 2 entrance points along South Church Street be barricaded and that vehicles entering from Southeast Broad Street be required to exit onto Southeast Broad as well. If the board approves the application, staff recommends the standard 7 conditions plus the following. Number 8, the applicant shall have a Tennessee licensed surveyor assist in the site layout to ensure that the tent and tent stakes do not encroach into the 25-foot utility easement shown on the site layout. Number 9, the applicant shall provide a walkway 5 feet in width across the 25-foot utility easement to ensure that customers entering from Southeast Broad Street can safely access the fireworks tent by foot. Number 10, the applicant shall provide a barricade around the existing sodded area on the site to prevent vehicular access. And number 11, the applicant shall provide a Class 3 barricade across the 2 northernmost access ramps on South Church Street. From South Church Street, the only access to the site shall be from the existing paved driveway shared with McDonald's. Staff can answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for staff? Would the applicant, I don't know if she's here, the applicant like to add anything at this point?
We go along with all the rules. We have 3 barriers, 15 barrels. We rope off that area with caution tape, and we plan to, with the surveyor, Hudson Steel, will be there the day they erect the tent up, and we'll do everything we've always done. Thank you.
Thank you. This time we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? You'd come forward. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for discussion or a motion.
No further questions. I'll make a motion to approve with the 11 conditions set by the staff.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposed? There are none. That application has been approved. Next, we'll go to application Z16036 by Jake Lloyd of Mid-America Distributors, requesting a special use permit to operate a temporary outdoor vending establishment on property in the Commercial Highway District located at the southeast corner of the intersection of Southeast Broad Street and Kensington Square Court. Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lloyd's proposed fireworks tent would be located in the existing Dollar General store parking lot at the southeast corner of Southeast Broad and Kensington Square Court. The fireworks tent would be located on the northwestern side of the site. The applicant has previously been approved for fireworks sales at this site. The applicant attests that all standards of general applicability have been met. If the board approves the application, staff recommends the standard 7 conditions plus number 8, vehicular access from Southeast Broad Street shall not be allowed, and number 9, all grass and weeds growing through the existing gravel shall be removed and or destroyed. The applicant shall supplement existing gravel with additional gravel to provide a smoother driving and walking surface where needed. Staff can answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for staff? Mr. Lloyd, anything you'd like to add to this one? All right, this time we'll hold the public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for discussion or a motion.
No further questions. I make a motion to approve with the conditions set by the staff.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? There are none. That application has been approved. Next, we'll move to application Z16037 by Jake Lloyd of Mid-America Distributors, requesting a special use permit to operate a temporary outdoor vending establishment on property in the Commercial Highway District located at 2870 Old Fort Parkway.
Mr. Chairman, this tent would be located in the existing Kelton's Hardware Store parking lot at 2870 Old Fort Parkway. The fireworks tent would be located on the southwestern side of the site. The applicant has been previously approved for fireworks sales at this site. The applicant attests that all standards of general applicability have been met. And if the board approves the application, staff recommends the standard 7 conditions plus number 8, type 3 barricades shall be placed on the site as shown on the site layout exhibit. And number 9, the applicant shall place traffic cones on Old Fort Parkway if customers use the shoulder for parking. Staff can answer any questions that you may have.
Where was this again?
Kelton's Hardware.
Any other questions for staff? Anything from the applicant on this one? This time we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for discussion or a motion.
Make a motion we approve, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? That application has been approved. The next application is Z16038 by Jake Lloyd of Mid-America Distributors, requesting a special use permit to operate a temporary outdoor vending establishment, Commercial Highway District, located at 1815 to 1849 Memorial Boulevard. Mr. Anthony.
Mr. Chairman, this tent would be located in the Northside Place Shopping Center parking lot, located at 1849 Memorial Boulevard. The site is located on the west side of Memorial near the Haynes Hardware store. The fireworks tent would be located on the northwestern side of the site. The applicant has been previously approved for fireworks sales at this site. The applicant attests that all standards of general applicability have been met. And if the board approves the application, staff recommends the standard 7 conditions plus 3 more. Number 8, type 3 barricades shall be placed along the eastern side of the tent, which faces Memorial Boulevard. Number 9, the applicant shall provide 2-way traffic circulation between the tent and Memorial Boulevard. And number 10, the applicant shall arrange the tent such that the drive aisle on the northern side of the tent is equal to or greater than that provided behind the existing building. Staff can answer any questions you may have.
Questions for staff? Anything from the applicant on this one? No. This time we'll conduct the public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for Discussion or a motion?
If there's no further discussion, I move to approve the application subject to staff comments.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? There are none. That application's been approved. Our last application today is Z16039 by Jake Lloyd of Mid-America Distributors, requesting a special use permit to operate a temporary outdoor vending establishment on property in the commercial fringe district located at 2061 Las Casas Pike. Mr. Anthony.
Mr. Chairman, this tent would be located in the Northfield Station Shopping Center parking lot at 2061 Las Casas Pike. This site formerly housed a Food Lion grocery store. The fireworks tent would be located on the northwestern side of the site. The applicant has been previously approved for fireworks sales at this site. The applicant attests that all standards of general applicability have been met. We do have one concern regarding this site, and I know it's been addressed in previous years. The proposed location of the fireworks tent is more than 200 feet from the nearest business selling alcohol for on-site consumption, but it is barely 200 feet away. So the applicant will need to adhere to the location shown on the site layout exhibit to ensure that the tent complies with that 200-foot requirement. If the board approves the application, staff recommends the standard 7 conditions. We can answer any questions you may have.
Questions for staff? Mr. Lloyd?
I know where it needs to go.
Okay. This time we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for discussion or a motion.
No further questions. I'll make a motion to approve the application with the conditions recommended by the staff.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? That application has been approved. Thank you, sir. Next item, staff reports and other business.
Other than congratulating you, we have no other reports.
You did a great job.
Made it through. Thank you. We'll adjourn. You get to wave the wand officially.